should we dive into our topic right now?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're here to introduce the show. Should we introduce the show? Let's
do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what it's all about. Yeah. It's yeah, I mean, I guess we're mainly just wanting to communicate that capitalism has completely failed. Communism is inevitable, and instead of, you know, sort of just sat there eating the doom pill, you know, worrying about how bad things are, we just kind of have to change the conversation now to how it's going to happen, so how things are going to change, how things are already changing, how things are going to change.
Yeah, basically. I think we are what's brought us together here. Like, we do have, you know, personal and ideological differences, and I think across the online left, people have personal and ideological differences. But like, one of the biggest divisions that we see in leftists at the moment is people who think that everything's just fucked and it's just no hope, versus people who think that we can do something. And all of us think that we can do something, and we'd like to talk to you all about what can be done. Unfortunately, it's a really complicated issue, and so we're not going to do that all this week. Like, it takes a lot longer than that, right? So we're gonna this week introduce the show and give the general battle plan, like, you know, what's it gonna look like in the coming weeks, and then week by week we'll focus on different things, because an important side to this is that social media really has you feeling like you should do everything. Like, you're on your Twitter feed and you can see that people in prisons are being treated like shit, and there are wildfires, and there's an oil spill on fire in the ocean, and it looks like a CGI scene from a movie and shit like this, right? And you're just like, I have to care about all of these things, but I can't do anything about any of them. And one of the most important things that we're going to be doing, I think, going forward, is that week by week, we're going to focus on different topics. We will revisit them proportionally to how much they need talking about, proportionally to how much we want to focus people's attention on them. And like, pick one. Hey, chatters, pick one, get fucking stuck in. Just go for it. Like, you don't have to just be a little bit into everything anymore. You put your effort into something, and if everyone puts their effort into something, we'll be changing something, right?
I want to.
I think.
Oh, go ahead, please.
You go for it. I was gonna say, with, like, you know, what we see on Twitter with all these big things happening, I think that a lot of people think that you know, there's, like, I guess, like, the path to communism is about, like, you know, like, just some big, like, revolutionary moment or something like that, where it's just like, okay, it's D-Day or something like that. But there's so many little things that people can be working, and there's things like, it's not just like, these things are already happening around us, right? There's like strikes, there's like, you know, people like organizing like mutual aid, all these things, like, it's already happening. But yeah, like our whole thing is that there's not many people on the online left that are really talking about that at this point. Like, a lot of people are really, you know, transfixed with like other forms of, I guess, like, kind of like leftist entertainment, whether it's like the internet blood sports or, you know, things like that, which, you know, like, I think, you know, like, we can understand the appeal. It's like people getting really heated and it feels like you're part of something or whatever. But yeah, but we're going to focus more on like actual, like, things that you can just go out and either like do, or like, you know, even join up with people in your community that are already doing stuff, things like that. Because it's like, you know, there's this huge journey in front of us, and we kind of got to start taking these steps, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something I'll also touch on in like our relationship to social media, is something I'm going to touch on in something I'm writing at the moment, which will come out later this year, called Cyberpunk 2022, a direction for the online left. It's all about what we can all be doing, specifically as people who are online. Like, we're all losers who are really addicted to politics online. Not everyone has the brainworms that we have, so we should acknowledge that and, like, you know, organize as a group. And that's something I'll be writing. So, you know, again, if people don't know me, like, that's something that is coming up later for me. But something I wanted to touch on, I've got a couple of book recommendations here, and one of the most important ones is Climate Leviathan by Joel Wainwright and Jeff Mann. And one of the things that we should maybe start talking about, like, to launch into a bit of our like roundtable and discussion today, is something that the book touches on really well. Again, that's called Climate Leviathan by Joel Wainwright and Jeff Mann, and it's it talks about basically what the world is going to look like in the coming years, depending on a few different variables. And one of the most important variables is how much we all work together and what we can do to change things. But the overlaying thing is that there is collapse going on, right? We can see it all around us. Like, there are food shortages, there are problems with the global supply chain, capitalism. This is the thing. Capitalism has failed. We talk online in way too much of a binaristic way, as if, like, if capitalism is still happening, it can't have failed. But it's like, look around you, it's failed. Like, literally, look around you, it's failed. All that remains for us to do now is organize and fight, and we're going to have our own new system, the one that we built. Yeah, so one of the things that the book communicates really well is that a lot of people think that a lot of people have been so deeply entrenched in the ideology of state control and the belief that the state is going to take care of us, that people look at climate change and they think that the state is failing to manage it. Like, the state would stop climate change, but it's failing at its job.
Right.
It's not, right? We all get this. It's not. It's doing its job exactly right, and it has to be opposed because what it is doing, like, the job the state is doing is climate change.
Yeah.
And it's going to need to be opposed.
As an outsider, it might appear that, you know, like, even looking at things like the Russian Revolution, you might, like, if you were to read like a really brief history book, like the kind you might get in high school or something like that, you'd think like, oh, it's just like one day the workers just got fed up. But it's like, no, it was like this very long, protracted thing beforehand. And if we're going to be realistic, you know, that's what it takes.
Yeah, totally.
One thing, Sophie, that's you really helped me with is, I remember one time, I think we were having a conversation like off stream maybe, and you were talking about how when people say that capitalism wants this to happen, capitalism wants it to happen, that wasn't the correct framing. That although it's kind of getting there, but it's not quite. You said it's because capitalism isn't a person. It's like it's like a bacteria or something.
I think this is a really interesting thing. I kind of had a big brain moment about this, where I kind of realized that, like, we should be understanding systems as a thing without center, mind, or memory, because that's what they are. And I likened it to the spread of a virus, or, like, you know, and through the lens of pathology and epidemiology. And then I found out that you studied epidemiology, and I was like, oh shit, fucking incredible divine provenance in my comrades, like, meant to be, right?
Yeah, so Chad, if you didn't know, I'm a epidemiologist. Like, I'm a published scientist in epidemiology. I quit that because I was getting really disenamored for a number of reasons. And now that I see that what it's turned into is, you know, like the CDC deciding to bend their COVID quarantine amount of time that they recommend that people, like, are quarantined for COVID. Depending on what Delta is, like, requested to increase their sales or something. Like, this isn't a huge surprise to me. And so it's kind of the vibe, one of the vibes, kind of a vibe that I got out of it earlier, which is why I bailed. And so it's really interesting to see it get to this point. But anyways, yeah, so that's a side note. But yeah, it was really cool that you're interested in epidemiology. You describe the stuff through, like, epidemiologically. It's cool.
It might seem like splitting hairs, but it's not. Like, it's not things that capital wants, it's things that benefit capital. And capitalism is just this, like, I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's a thing without center, mind, or memory. And we need to start talking about making our own thing without center, mind, or memory, because that's what human systems are. And so that's the thing that we're going to talk about today. I think probably touch on, at least, is mutual aid networks and how that evolves into dual power.
Yeah. Fuck yeah.
About kind of what you're saying about there is, like, a lack of political imagination. And there is, I mean, it's like the capitalist realism thing. Like, people, people will sooner, like, you know, imagine that the world will just end, we'll all die in the climate apocalypse or whatever, than actually having the imagination to think outside of, you know, the current kind of capitalist hegemony sort of thing. And I think that's, like, that's something that we all talked about a lot.
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
going into the
totally.
stream, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So for those who aren't familiar, Mark Fisher was a really, powerful Marxist academic, and one of the things that he wrote was called Capitalist Realism, and it's about a delusion that we all suffer from under liberal capitalism, where we can all acknowledge the problems. We can see them right in front of our eyes. We can see inequality. We can see climate change. We can see racialized policing and wealth inequality, and we can see all the effects and how they intersect and enforce and create, bigotries and systemic prejudices and so on. And we can see all of those things, and we're just like, can't do anything about it. Yeah. And I think that like a lot of people read that and then go, damn, that's so true. He just like me for real, for real. And they don't think, right, so if that's a delusion I'm suffering from, I should stop suffering from that delusion, right? And I think that's like, again, talking about this division, a lot of people do come away from this and they're like, yeah, it is just fucked. It just is fucked. Where it's meant to be an analysis of how people think it's just fucked, and to tell them that that's wrong. Right. A lot of people come away with it and they're just like, yeah, it's just really fucked. And the point is actually to understand that you need to expand your thinking. That's the opposite of what
it's supposed to be doing. It's supposed to display the absurdity of thinking it's an impossible situation and how that's a block. Yeah.
And that's what we want to discuss today, right? Is expanding your imagination, being able to imagine a better world.
Yeah, like I've definitely been guilty of this in the past, where I've come up with sort of excuses to not do activism. Do you know
and that's part of it as well. And also, part of the kind of capitalist machinery is to allow space for like anti-capitalist kind of like media and things like this. Like I saw Alexia Clara, I think it is, in the chat mentioning things like that, and it's like there are these really toothless outlets that we are given to feel like we are kind of, like we're doing something special. We're doing our activism. We logged on, we did our activism for the day, and now we're logging off. So and that's something definitely to keep in mind. But maybe we'll talk about that stuff on another stream.
We definitely are going to do a targeted week where we talk about the black pill and we talk about doomerism, and we basically help anyone in chat who's kind of struggling with that really directly.
If everything that you believe is going to happen, then that's going to happen anyway, right? So
but I believe that a revolution is inevitable. Which is the thing I think we should state for the record here. I think everyone in chat understands that Twitch has terms of service, and before any hate watchers rush to try and get us, we aren't promoting or endorsing anything illegal on this stream. We will endorse and encourage people to engage in civil disobedience and legal actions against capitalism and against climate change. It is the official position of this show that people will be engaging in a lot of illegal actions against capitalism and against the systems that are killing our planet. And we will discuss those at length and talk to people, if we can, who have been involved with things like that in the past. But we don't endorse them, because we're not endorsing crime or criminal activity whatsoever.
I don't know what hate watchers are, so I'm just gonna take your word for it. Okay. I will say that I will say that after Bernie didn't win, that was me. I was just like, that's it. Especially with climate change, I'm like, this isn't something that we can just like try again. It seems like we missed the boat.
Well, the thing about Bernie is that Bernie Sanders is a reformist, and we will have an episode about reforms and about non-reformist reforms and why M for A would be a non-reformist reform, but he's still in electoral politics and invested in socialist reform. Yeah. And I think that some smart people have said when the state makes reform impossible, it makes revolution inevitable.
There we go. Exactly. I after Bernie lost, I made a video about just a little short one about stuff like that, about staying on target. And it's kind of the thing where it's like, there are these like setbacks or whatever like that, or things that we might see as setbacks, but there's we have a long-term goal. The long-term goal is communism, socialism, communism, whatever, and you want it that's the goal, it's a lot of people, I think Bernie was the goal. And they were like, when it didn't happen or whatever, they were like, oh no, that's the whole thing. But we really need to look at this is we need to look downstream from that, focus on the end game, and then it's these little things. It's okay, cool. It might have been better if you know, things panned out a different way or whatever like that. But we're still, you know, we're still working on other thing. We're still on this. We're still on the track.
Well, I know a lot of people
to kind of like shine light on, you know, the things that you can do, because again, like, you know, we're all saying everybody. So I think a lot of people as well, when they first heard of, you know, people like Bernie, not just Bernie, but also like Jeremy Corbyn in this country, it's probably their first ever exposure to like a potential for like things getting better. So they've not even heard of things like that we know now, like dual power and mutual aid, strikes, and stuff like that. And you know, just having that like glimmer of hope and then having it disappear is obviously, and you're not going to see the other stuff obviously straight away that we just talked about, but again, that's our job. That's what we're here to do.
Right, exactly. They aren't going to show it to you because they have a capitalist interest. And, you know, mainstream media is invested in the capitalist system. It's never going to run against it, not meaningfully. We want a communist world, so we're going to tell you what should be happening and what is already happening. And that's, I think, is going to be a really important thing for Hope, is just showing people what's already being done.